Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Sweeney Show, Business and Law Podcast. I'm David Sweeney, and I'm delighted to welcome today Mairéad O'Driscoll, aka the Tax Nerd. Mairéad, how are you?
Great, good, thanks.
You are most welcome. What a great name, the Tax Nerd.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's probably not the most glamorous of
Oh, I think it's
titles,
brilliant.
but
It certainly stands out. And are you a tax nerd? Is that your day-to-day job, or what is the
yeah,
background of the Tax Nerd?
yeah. So I'm a tax advisor and
Okay.
accountant. So
Yeah.
I've worked in tax over 7 years since I
Okay.
left college.
Yeah.
My day to day is corporate tax. That's my main area.
Yeah.
So the tax nerd is more geared, towards personal taxes. So the tax nerd was created during COVID.
Okay.
So I just kind of started the page.
Yeah.
Just to get the information out there because I had so many people asking
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
friends and family, just simple things like how to claim tax back and
Yeah.
things. Not simple,
Yeah.
simple.
Yeah.
And I realized that no one really knows,
Yeah.
really, unless you're in tax, and it's not really easy to figure it out unless you kind of know where to look. So I just thought the page might be good to just
And
help people understand.
Were you surprised at the amount of people that don't know what you would think are like simple tax rebates or things that you can get money back or pay less tax, I suppose, ultimately? Were you surprised the lack of
Totally.
knowledge out there in the general population?
Oh, like completely, like majority of my friends wouldn't know that they're entitled to claim some tax back. Employees, most of my friends are employees. I don't have many who are self-employed.
Yeah.
And the majority, if I tell them, oh, did you claim tax back on this, that or the other? They'd be like, what? That doesn't relate to me. And I'm like, yeah, it does. So
And
yeah, no,
Do you think there's a
big
why
lack
is
of
that like a gap in our education, a gap in culture? Like why aren't people kind of looking at their taxes every year, even as a PAYE,
Yeah.
and saying, look, where can I save here? It seems to be a habit that we just don't do.
Yeah, I think there's a mix of things. There's a lack of in our education. I don't remember ever being taught about it, to be honest, in school, or in college bar. I don't think I even learned about claiming tax back in college, to be
Yeah.
honest. My learnings were more corporate tax and tax legislation. So I suppose a lack of education. I do think there's a bit of fear around it as well, which doesn't help.
Yeah.
A lot of people who
Do you
I
think
speak
it's
to
like
as well.
if you go poke the bear, something else might come back and you might owe some more money?
Yeah, exactly. There's huge fear out of the unknown. I think people
Yeah.
are like, geez, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't go near them now. But like, the majority, especially for employees, you wouldn't owe any tax bills because the onus is on your employer,
Yeah.
To calculate the
Yes.
correct taxes.
Yeah.
So majority of the cases, you are going to be the one that's owed tax back. So I think
Yeah.
there is a bit of fear out there.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you
Fear of
what,
the
we
revenue.
might loop back at the end of this conversation and maybe have some tips to people that they can maybe reclaim some tax back, because this is obviously a huge week for anybody who's
Yeah.
interested in tax and obviously in their own personal finances. But the budget was announced yesterday for next year, so like
Yeah.
just I suppose if you could just start at zero, like what is the budget? From terms of what the government do, and how then is it actually, what does it mean to kind of the normal person on the street?
Yeah, so the budget is done every year for the next year, and it's basically like any business's budget. The government has to do a budget as well, where it gathers all their income and what they expect their expenses are going to be for next year. So all their income, so their income comes from tax would be one of the main drivers. They have all the areas that they get income from, maybe if they own shares in some companies
Oh
and
yeah,
things like that. So
government
they
bodies.
kind of calculate how much income they're going to have, budget for that, and then they have to look at all their expenditure. What do they need to spend on? So where does the money go? So things like infrastructure, school, medical, salaries, things like that. So they have to see, how much is left then, and what can they do in terms of what areas might need more. So
And what?
for example, the cost of living crisis and things like that.
Yeah. And so
they it's like their plan.
what was your initial reaction to yesterday's budget?
I mean, I thought, there is a lot there for people short term, a lot in terms of the cost of living and things like that for the next 6 months. There is money going to everyone, which I think is good. Again, these are all once-off payments and temporary, so I think it's good for maybe the next even 3 to 6 months.
Yeah.
And then maybe long term, I'm not sure there was a lot in there for long term. But for now, I do think, people will be comfortable
So
for the winter.
okay. The So this is what I always, well, one of the questions I'd ask is that, so how, I'm trying to catch you out here now, okay? But how much of a role does politics play in putting out a budget? So say, obviously, there's going to be a handover of government, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are in government at the moment, and there could be an election coming up and could be looming in the not too distant future. Like, how does that play with like people pleasing or the general public, where they have to give these discounts or give these subsidies, or how much does it, or is it completely a money process or a money driven budget?
So there's money, but there's policies as well, that they have to follow. I can only really speak from a tax point of view, but when they are planning on introducing a new tax credit or change a new tax rule, then there is a lot of legislation and policy discussions behind that. The Irish Tax Institute get involved. All the big four accountancy firms all have opinions, and they're all discussed prior to it being finalised. So there is a lot of input from a non-political side in terms of tax. Now, I don't know, for in other areas, how much of that is discussed and put out there.
Even like kind of, we'll go with the usual stuff like cigarettes, alcohol and petrol. Were they hit this year?
Just cigarettes increased 50 cents, I think. And then the diesel and petrol, the excise duty reduction is staying in place, but the carbon tax is increasing. So I think it's net. Okay.
And then any excise and alcohol are any increase?
No.
Okay.
There's a decrease for cider, 50% decrease in excise for cider. Okay. So that's quite specific.
The reason for that, or you don't know why you would do that?
I'm not sure. I think maybe it's something to do with small breweries. I think I'm not 100% sure, to be honest, why that specific brand.
Okay, and so after you put up a great post on Instagram yesterday, kind of like a synopsis of the main headings in the budget. So what were they? What would you like to discuss? What's worth discussing?
So I suppose for me, obviously, I'm tax related, so I can start with just income tax. So for the higher rate of income tax, you have to earn up to 40,000 before you go into the higher rate tax. So that's increased. So last year, anything you earned over 36,800 was taxed at 40%. Now you can earn up to 40k without going into the higher rate. So that is a saving of €640 next year, which is beneficial. So if anyone listening earns 40k or more, you will save €640 next year just on income tax. If you earn 36,800 or less in a year, it will make no difference to this specific area, this income tax rate band. So that is helpful. It's a big saving. They haven't had that much of an increase in a while. The other one is the increase in the tax credits. That applies to everyone, regardless of the rate of income you're on. So your personal tax credits, that's everybody, is increased by €75. And then your PAYE, or the earner's tax credit. So the earner's tax credit is for the self-employed. So again, that hits self-employed and employees. So everyone will be up €150 next year on that. And that's regardless of the rate of income you're on. And then there was just a small increase then on the rate of USC that you earn at 2%. So they increased that you earn more at 2% before you go into a higher rate of 4.5. So that's a saving of €40. So a small saving on USC. So overall, if you earn 40k or over, you're looking at a saving about €800 next year. If you're below 36,800, you have a saving about €190 next year. So
but that's positive, isn't it? Because it's moving in the right direction as regards a PAYE worker, because there's been lots of budgets where taxes have increased and tariffs have lowered.
100%. And like already, the effective tax rate is I'm saying 40% is the higher rate, but that's not including USC and PRSI. So the effective rate is 52%. Once you now hit over 40k, which is a lot to stomach, that the government takes more than you get. So any and this isn't just employees, this is self-employed. So if you're self-employed, these rates apply to you too. So no, it's definitely beneficial and a move in the right way.
What about people in renters in the rental market and people trying to get on the property ladder? Is there any kind of reliefs for those, or what's available?
So the renter's tax credit, so that was introduced, which is great to see. There was a renter's credit years ago, which was phased out in 2017. So it's €500 credit per person. It's not per property. Now the budget obviously lays all this out, but it's the the acts in the legislation that bring this into motion. So the Finance Act will be in October sometime, and we'll get more detail. There's not a lot of detail around the renter's credit yet. I'm getting loads of questions on it. What I do understand though is that your landlord would need to be registered with the RTB in order to claim it. So I've had, I can't tell you the amount of questions, people saying they pay cash in hand to their landlord, will they be able to claim? And unfortunately, looks like they won't be. You'd need, proof and everything like that. So it is welcome, and it's for the year 2022 to 2025.
Okay. Oh, wow.
So you'll be able to claim for this year, but you won't be able to claim for 2022 until 2023.
So if you're renting you just pay your rent as normal. You hope that the landlord's registered with the RTB, and then you get that as a tax credit off your tax that you would pay on an annual basis, whatever it is it?
Exactly. Okay. So as an employee, when we move into 2023, you'll be able to claim for 2022, so you'll probably get a refund into your account.
Lovely.
The €500 is what I would imagine, and the details will come out. It's great. It's positive. I mean, if you divide that by 12, I'm not sure what that is. Per month to help towards it, but
And there was obviously a scheme, the Help to Buy scheme. Has that been extended, or is it still there? There was talks maybe a year ago it was going to be abolished, wasn't it? And there was a time limit on it, but I think they made a decision on that again, have they?
Yeah, so the last few years they've extended it by 1 year. So this year they extended for 2 years, which I think is good, because people, it takes a while to set up those processes. But for people that don't know, the Help to Buy scheme is for first-time buyers, and you get a refund if you meet all the conditions of the income tax you've paid over the last 4 years. Now it's capped at about €30,000, but that can be very helpful.
5% of the build, and the house must be a new build. And I just know this from my own office, and it must be less than €500,000.
Which I think people were hoping to see a change.
Huge benefit.
To some of those.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, absolutely.
You thought some more, was it?
Yeah, just the 500,000. I think people are struggling with, if you lived in Dublin, or you can hit that very easily. And this, you need to have the 70% loan to value on your mortgage. I think they're very strict on that. But it's so beneficial, especially applies to self bills as well. So.
So all in all, even those 3 or 4 or 5 things we discussed there, it's quite positive as the end result in a PAYE pays packet on an annual basis.
No, I think so. There were talks, of introducing that 30% rate for people, which doesn't look like it's going to happen, to be honest. So they said they're considering it, but it would maybe in a couple of years. But
I saw they announced a thing yesterday, once-off cost of living supports. Is this how they're trying to deal with the cost of living crisis that we're currently experiencing?
Yeah, exactly. So there's a big list, depending on what it is. But so, for example, the €600 electricity one, which is going to be paid in 3 installments of 200. I think they're doubling once off your social welfare payments. They're doubling the fuel allowance, things like that, which I think is meant to tackle the cost of living and electricity prices. But again, they're great to have, and I'm sure they're going to help out so many families. But in the short term, I think is the only worry for me there. But again, I suppose deal with the problems as they arise. But is that a unique thing that they brought in, those supports once off? Yeah, I don't remember seeing those for COVID.
Yeah.
I haven't seen those in years. So
how much of an impact has COVID had on the country? And is this budget out of COVID budget, or is there still some effects from COVID in how this budget was put together?
I'd say there's definitely still lingerings of COVID. People are still recovering. There's so many industries that can't get staff. I know the hairdressing, hospitality, which is affecting their business. So I do think there's still remnants of COVID in there, and I know there is a lot of debt warehousing schemes being extended for those businesses that suffered.
Is there any? There used to be the budget would be announced on the day, and the government would make a big announcement, and then within 24 hours they'd have forgotten somebody, or they would have added a tax to someone that shouldn't deserve it. Is there any rollbacks today? Do you know of anything have they got it right this time, do you think?
Well, it depends who you're talking to, I suppose. But I think so. I haven't seen them, promising much else. I think a big thing a lot of, say, small businesses were upset about was the cap on the energy costs. I know they did introduce for small businesses a scheme where they're going to help them out. So that's actually run by the revenue as well. So that's where if you're a small business, you have to compare your electricity and gas bills for 2022 to 2021. If there's a 50% increase in your costs, the revenue, the government will cover 40% of that excess if you qualify. So you have to be a trading company and be tax compliant, and you need to self-assess for that. But that could be helpful for small businesses, but I just don't think it helps kind of bigger businesses with bigger electric and gas costs.
When do these new taxes and tariffs come into play?
So for tax, these tax changes will apply to the tax year 2023, so the 1st of January 2023, and the details will be released in the Finance Act or the Finance Bills. That's another big day in the tax world. That will be in October, so that's when you'll actually get all the details of what you can claim, how you can claim, what if I only say for the renter's tax credit rented for 6 months, things like that.
Where is there because we do a lot of stuff here, and we would pay. We have some property, and we would use the Revenue Online Services website and revenue.ie. I actually think that's a brilliant website. Like, is that a resource you would recommend for people to look in general?
Yeah, a great resource. Well, the revenue page can be quite helpful. What is very good for the budget as well is the actual, if you go onto the Department of Finance page and click into their publications, they have, details of everything. They have literally the speech there in PDF. They've done out graphs, everything. So the Department of Finance is a good place. And then just follow the taxer on Instagram for tax.
Of course,
tax information.
Of course, that goes without saying. We spoke it there at the start about some general ways people could maybe claw back some money, and I saw you did a spot on Today FM there to say that we're maybe paying too much tax. So how do we? Is there avenues for us outside of the budget where we can continue to maybe save some money on an annual basis?
Yeah, so there's loads of things you can claim tax back on. So first of all, being aware you can claim tax back, and number two, what you can claim it on. And it's really straightforward to do it, and you can claim for the last 4 years. So anyone listening who hasn't claimed their tax back, you're paying tax, please go and do it. You're fully entitled to do it. So the biggest one would be medical costs. If you're a taxpayer, you're entitled to get 20% back on qualifying medical costs, and that's really, really broad. So it covers obvious things like your doctor visits, hospital visits, but it also covers, prescriptions, if they're monthly prescriptions, whatever they may be. It covers consultations with maybe psychiatrists, physiotherapists, nutritionists, dietitians, any registered medical practitioner.
If you had your own health insurance, I presume you can't double claim. Is it that you claim off the health insurance and claim the difference, or is it that the government, which one actually gets priority?
So you'll claim whatever you get refunded from your medical insurance if you have medical insurance, and then the balance. So whatever you don't get back from your medical insurance, you can claim for the revenue. So it all adds up. And within medical, then there's non-routine dental. So if you have children with braces, if you Invisalign, they're chunky ones, or laser eye surgery, infertility. Like, it's a big list. So there's definitely something there over the last 4 years that you could claim back on. And then there's the working from home relief that was popular.
So what's
last year we've been working from home.
Yeah, what's that involve?
So if you work from home and your employer does not pay you $3.20 a day towards that, you can claim working from home relief. So you get 30% off the cost of your broadband for the year and 30% off your light and heat for the year, but then that's proportioned by the number of days you work from home. So you don't need to work that out yourself. You just pop in the days and the amount for the year on the revenue website, and they calculate how much. So that's where popping in there as well. If your employer pays your medical insurance on your behalf, you can also claim tax back on that as well. People aren't aware, but you can claim the lower of 20% of your policy, or 20% of €1,000. So that's another one. So I have like a checklist on my page, but there's loads of different things. There's tuition fees if you're paying for, children in college and third level education. There is good tax back on that as well. So lots of people just aren't aware that you're entitled to those. Another one, is flat rate expenses. So these are tax relief for a number of professions. So there's a list of 200 professions who can claim this. So it's nurses, doctors, mechanics, construction, teachers, osteotherapists. It's a big range. And again, you can claim tax back on that. And it's very straightforward to do on ROS. It's all in the same section, and the money goes into your account within a couple of weeks.
Okay, well,
So
listen,
it's
Mairéad,
there for you. Go and get
thank
it.
you so much for your time. This has been
No problem.
fascinating and educating. The Tax Nerd, if anyone wants to contact you, where's the best place to find you?
Instagram would be
Okay.
the main place. Yeah, the tax nerd _ is where you'll find me.
Brilliant. Listen, thank you so much. Really appreciate it, and all the best for the
problem.
future.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.